Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the National Coalition for an Infrastructure Bank uh, presentation tonight, which the theme is Action Now. We have a great program lined up for you tonight. My name is Jack Hanna. I've been involved with this effort for many years and welcome you to our presentation this evening. We have a great lineup of elected officials and authorities throughout the entire country that is supporting this effort. And we welcome you to this presentation. With the number of people that we have, we're going to run through this quickly. So please indulge me when I try to um, uh, push things forward. But we want to run through things quickly in order to provide everyone with an opportunity to speak, and then have questions from the attendees in order to engage our participants. Let me start off first with Mayor Lacey Beatty, who was elected to be the mayor of Beaverton, Oregon. And I was recently a resident of Oregon until December of 2023. So I think she was elected after or shortly before I left. And welcome to our call tonight. Mayor Beatty's a huge supporter of our effort, and she also serves as on the advisory board of the United States Conference of Mayors. She's a U.S. Army veteran who served in the Iraqi War, and Mayor Beatty has used her platform to advocate strongly for veteran causes, both statewide and nationally. Mayor, welcome to our call tonight, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. And since it is 5 p.m. on the West Coast, if you hear my kids screaming in the background, that's just the life of a working mom. I'm really excited to join you this evening. If you are unaware of where Beaverton, Oregon is geographically, we share a border with Portland. And so I'm part of the greater Portland metro area. About 2.4 million Oregonians call this part of Oregon home. So infrastructure is something we talk about all the time. Oregon is in a housing crisis. We are struggling to build our way out of it. We're addressing on-street homelessness as quickly as we can, but as we're moving people through the continuum of care, what we do know is we're not producing enough housing. One of the largest barriers local government has is the infrastructure to go into place for housing and for roads. And we have since our highway trust fund is not the same as what it used to be, building infrastructure is incredibly complicated. So this infrastructure bank solves an issue that local government has. This is a bipartisan liked program. Since local government is not asking for money, we're asking for an opportunity to borrow money at a low rate so we can get the things that we know done and built. This is the number one thing that I talk about for the last 6 years as mayor is how to build housing and how to build and maintain roads. Our state is struggling right now with this concept. We just had a Republican run initiative on to the ballot to stop a gas tax increase that would have returned $8 million to my city to be able to continue to do infrastructure. Our number one capital investment is our 210 miles of road in my city, and we are struggling to maintain them and build more. So I just want to encourage you today that this is a win-win. This is what we're talking about when we talk about the greatness of America. It really was during the era of being able to build things. What community needs right now more than ever is to see that government works, and government works when it builds. So I'm excited for this. And I will also just say that we have a winning idea. We've done this with water as a country. We do something called a WIFIA loan. The city was able to borrow $50 million to move forward water projects and borrow it at a very low rate. So we already know that this type of loan model works. What we do need is a home and a bank that can withstand any federal government interference that can move on regardless of a federal administration. So federal governments change, local government is forever. Everyone in this country lives in a city or county. Everyone in this country needs infrastructure to get home and get to work. So thank you for the work that you do on this. Encourage your state rep or your federal representatives to get on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We greatly appreciate your support and participation and look forward to working with you and Oregon and everyone else in the country that needs the infrastructure that this country deserves. Next, we have very pleased to state 3 presentations from current congressional members that support our legislation that represents the increasing support we're obtaining throughout the entire country. And we are now up to 64 co-sponsors. And let us now present a video of our 3 congressional members tonight that have agreed to join us in that manner. The first is Congressman Amo, who spent most of his career in public service in Rhode Island and Washington, D.C. in the Biden White House, and served as special assistant to the president and deputy director of the White House Office of Intergovernment Affairs, where he worked as the principal liaison with mayors and local elected officials. All of these people understand how local government needs to have infrastructure funding in order to be successful to provide their services. So let us roll the first video of our Representative Amo.
Hi everybody, Congressman Gabe Amo here. I'm sorry I can't join you live, but I wanted to take a moment to thank you for your advocacy for healthy, affordable infrastructure. At a time when roads and bridges need fixing and housing prices are skyrocketing, the need for a national infrastructure bank has never been more urgent. A national infrastructure bank would help fund the investments that our communities need to thrive. It would provide communities from all walks of life access to the capital they need to put in new pipes, repair and repave roads, and erect new housing for working families. America's always met hurdles and crossroads with big investments. From the Works Progress Administration and the Tennessee Valley Authority during the Great Depression to President Biden's visionary bipartisan infrastructure law in the wake of the pandemic, we've proven that when we give working Americans a hand up, not a handout, they reach back to pull up the person behind them. In my state of Rhode Island, we've seen what an infrastructure bank can do. Since 2015, the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank has helped raise $2.5 billion for projects across our state, including clean water and energy projects, climate resilience, and the cleanup of hazardous waste sites. Scaling this model would allow communities to get the cash they need to make the improvements their communities need. Big challenges call for big changes, and now is a time of big challenges, so let's get this passed and ensure that communities across the country have the resources they need to bring their infrastructure into the 21st century. Keep up the good work and know that I have your back in this important fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Amo. We greatly appreciate your support and your presentation tonight. Next, we're going to move to our second congressional member that's making a video presentation, Congresswoman Andrea Salinas. Congresswoman Salinas is the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants and a first-generation American and dedicated public servant working for the people of Oregon in the 6th District. She worked as a U.S. congressional aide, an advisor to Senator Harry Reid and Congressman Pete Stark. She later served as a district aide for Congresswoman Darlene Hooley of Oregon and also served in the Oregon House of Representatives. And we're pleased to have her make her presentation tonight. Go ahead and roll the tape. Thank you, Randy.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Andrea Salinas, and I'm proud to represent Oregon's 6th Congressional District. Thank you to the Coalition for a National Infrastructure Bank for inviting me to speak with you tonight, and thank you to everyone joining this call. I also want to thank my colleague, Congressman Danny Davis, for sponsoring H.R. 5356, the National Infrastructure Bank Act. Oregon's 6th Congressional District covers the heart of the Willamette Valley. And while our district may be best known for our agriculture and world-famous Pinot Noir, we also are a manufacturing hub with industries including timber, semiconductors, and high-tech research. Across Oregon, our infrastructure is failing. Our roads are full of potholes, bridges are aging, drinking water systems need major upgrades, and communities are struggling to build enough housing. These issues affect whether businesses can grow, whether families can afford to stay in their communities, and whether people can count on safe or reliable infrastructure every day. The numbers back that up. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave Oregon a C on its most recent infrastructure report card. Our dams earned a D+, transit earned a D+, and our wastewater and stormwater systems also received D+ grades. Our drinking water systems need more than $10 billion in additional investment to ensure families have safe and reliable water. And we need at least 112,000 more affordable homes for Oregonians with the lowest incomes. When I talk with workers, business leaders, and elected officials, they all tell me Oregon has the workers to tackle these projects. We have skilled tradespeople who are ready to build bridges and install new water lines, but what we don't have is reliable projects to keep them working. That's why I support the National Infrastructure Bank Act. The American Society of Civil Engineers estimates our country faces nearly a $4 trillion infrastructure investment gap. We aren't going to close that gap by thinking small. We need long-term investment that gives states, local governments, businesses, and workers the certainty they need to plan for the future. One thing I appreciate about this proposal is that it's designed to finance itself rather than rely on annual appropriations. That gives communities greater confidence that if they begin planning a project today, the funding will still be there tomorrow. That long-term certainty matters. Infrastructure projects aren't built overnight. Communities spend years planning them. Workers train for them. Businesses invest around them. When federal commitments become unpredictable, everyone pays the price. The federal government has a responsibility to be a reliable partner. States need to know they can count on Washington. Workers need confidence that today's project won't be the last one. Local leaders need the certainty to plan for the next generation instead of the next budget cycle. I'll close with this. The bipartisan infrastructure law showed what we can accomplish when we make infrastructure a national priority. But the work isn't finished. Across Oregon and across the country, communities still need safer roads, reliable drinking water, modern transit, affordable housing, and the infrastructure that supports economic growth. This is about creating good paying jobs. It's about helping businesses grow. It's about making sure families have safe roads to drive on, clean water to drink, and communities that can continue to thrive. America has always grown because we were willing to invest in ourselves. It's time to think that big again. That's why I support the National Infrastructure Bank Act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Salinas. We greatly appreciate your presentation. We now move to the last video recording of our third congressional member that supports the bank's legislation, Congressman Magaziner, who represents the 2nd Congressional District in Providence, Rhode Island. He attended Brown University, where he served as president of the University Democrats, president of the College Dems of Rhode Island, and a member of the Brown University Steering Committee on Slavery and Justice. He has a Bachelor's of Arts in History and a Master's degree in Business Administration. And let us roll the tape.
Hi, this is Representative Seth Magaziner. Thank you for being a part of this important meeting in support of the National Infrastructure Bank Act. I want to start by recognizing Congressman Danny Davis for his leadership in introducing this important legislation. When I was state treasurer in Rhode Island, we launched the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, which put thousands of people to work, building affordable clean energy projects, replacing lead pipes, repairing roads and bridges, and more all across the state of Rhode Island. But in order to take this work to the next level, we need to pass the National Infrastructure Bank Act. This bill will make our country more competitive in the 21st century economy and unlock opportunity for millions of people, tradesmen and women who will be able to get good paying jobs rebuilding our country, and Americans from all walks of life who will have better commutes, lower costs, and better quality of life. We need to get this done, and I know that working together, we will. Thank you all for your partnership and your leadership.
And thank you, Congressman, again for your support for a national infrastructure bank and the legislation that we're promoting. Next, we're going to move to our live presenters, and we're all familiar with our stellar economic expert, Alfeco Mutardi, who is going to be presenting in her role and profession as a macroeconomist, excuse me, and a former senior economist at the International Monetary Fund. She served as chief economic advisor for the Coalition of an National Infrastructure Bank since our founding, and is a true expert on the assessment of our United States economy, including the development of a major policy initiative to promote the development of our infrastructure. So Alphecca, take it away, and thank you for joining us tonight.
So hello, everyone. Great to see some old faces and that have been with our coalition for a good while now, and some new ones as well. I'm going to be really brief. I just want to give you an update on the economy because the theme of this month's Zoom call is Action Now. And I would like to point out that it's the economy that is requiring action now and adoption of this National Infrastructure Bank Act, because we're not doing very well on the economy. The most shocking sort of picture that explains everything and where we are was this one that I found on the Federal Reserve website, St. Louis Federal Reserve website, which shows the share of labor's pay that comes out of everything that we produce in our economy. And I was just shocked to look at this graph. I mean, back in the 1970s, labor used to take about 65% of all of the compensation that occurred as a result of producing our GDP. Today, or in 2023, for example, that has plummeted. It's been going downward, but after the COVID, it really plummeted. And now the share of labor that is receiving in wages is just 0.57. And that explains why we have a K-shaped economy, why we have big affordability problems, why the middle class is sort of dying and becoming the very poverty-ridden class, and what the National Infrastructure Bank can do to help with this problem. I would really recommend to anybody who wants to look at our long-term history to look at Tom Hartman's 2020 book, The History of Monopolies, because it explains everything going all the way back to the American Revolutionary War. But the latest news is we could be slipping into a recession as a result of our short-term economic moves and what the administration has done to our economy since it came into power for a second time. Our GDP is slowing. It was 2.1% in the first quarter. It's expected to go down to 1.2% in the second quarter. The only thing that's holding it up is spending by the wealthy as a result of their earnings on the stock market. And it's a very much of a K-shaped economy where the lower half of the Americans are really struggling in this 250-year anniversary to make ends meet and pay their bills. And then it's been worsened by the Iran war, which jacked up oil prices. They're down, but they're expected to go back up again because the ceasefire is effectively ended. Job creation is slowing in our economy. We only created 100,000 jobs in all of last year. And we've had job cuts in almost every industry, including manufacturing. And even though productivity is way up, the American worker is not receiving the benefit of higher wages. Wages are staying flat. So they're being cut out more and more from this earnings from GDP. And meanwhile, inflation is still ticking along. It's down in June, but it's going to pop back up again because of the oil prices coming down our way. President Trump is threatening more tariffs. So the tariffs cost consumers $2,500 a person last year. That's expected to continue. The federal budget continues to run huge deficits. Meanwhile, members of Congress have proposed, or the one party has proposed, raising defense spending by 40% while cutting transportation and infrastructure spending in half. So that's not looking well for making our investments in infrastructure, which all of these members of Congress has aptly identified as huge needs for the economy. The financial sector is in trouble as well. what will the National Infrastructure Bank do? It will directly invest in great projects across America, rebuild our infrastructure, create 20 million new great paying family sustaining wage jobs, which will raise the wage level. It'll double economic growth and share more of it to the middle class and the lower class. It'll reduce income inequality. It improves affordability directly by lowering the cost of housing, making housing affordable, also affordable transportation, electric power, water, and it'll grow businesses. So we hope the small businesses will grow out of this. Here's where we are on the bill. We have now 64 members of Congress signed onto the bill. Again, we also thank Representative Danny Davis for sponsoring this bill, and we're in a drive, of course, to add more membership because our key strategy for our coalition is add as many members of Congress on board as we can, and we hope all of you can help with that effort as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Alphecca. We greatly appreciate your presentation. Our next presenter is Representative Cates, Kathleen Cates, who serves in the New Mexico House of Representatives. Previously, she was a CEO of 2 nonprofits and volunteered as a member of the New Mexico Development Disabilities Council. In 2025, in the legislative session, Kate served as vice chair on the Agriculture and Water Resources Committee, as well as a member on the Health and Human Services Committee. She resides in Rio Rancho, and Representative Cates, we're pleased to have you here tonight, and we welcome you to present your speech tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for these calls. I appreciate everyone spending some time on their evening on this very important initiative. I wanted to take a moment just to give an idea of what, for those of you who may not have visited my beautiful state of New Mexico, we are the 5th largest state in the country in landmass, but we only have 2.1 million residents. That being said, understand we are rich in minerals, oil and gas, solar, wind. We are one of the top states to be able to provide that, and key to be able to move it to your state through transmission lines. We are also in a water crisis currently where we can show that New Mexico will have 25% less water than they do right now in less than 50 years, in 47 years. That means that states that are east of the Mississippi are going to have 25% more water, usually. That means dealing with flooding. So such as a pipeline of redistributing water would be also another. So with our rich access of solar and wind, but also our minerals, it is essential that we have the transportation, the roads, the railroads, and the transmission lines to be able to do that. The National Infrastructure Bank is a wonderful, I believe, nonpartisan approach that brings economic development to the entire country in skilled labor that cannot be replaced by AI, that is essential for the health of our individual communities and for the country in itself. I wanted to also say that, as we heard from Oregon, we have a version of this as well. We call New Mexico Finance Authority, where the infrastructure is siloed, such as like bricks and mortar for day childcare or bricks and mortar for health clinics or water projects. And the legislature can individually fund those silos, but the same sort of process where these projects have technical support as they apply at national lending standards to be able to bring the projects into their communities. And it's worked very well, but we need to scale up. I am lucky enough to be in a state that our entire federal delegation supports this in the Congress, and I am grateful for that. So when I was first asked to speak, I was like, why do you need me? We're there. But I am going to spend my time talking to other state legislators. I have relationships with leaders in other states across the country to make sure that whether or not they're organized labor or from the banking association or just want to participate and want to encourage the economic development, which will help stabilize us no matter what the political culture is at the time, is essential. And so getting that education out to why this initiative is so important locally, state, and country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Cates. We greatly appreciate your attendance here tonight. Next, we're going to move on to New York and Assemblywoman Joanne Simon, who has been a very strong supporter of our effort over the years, making a very important presentation at the DNC National Convention in 2024. She is chair of the Mental Health Committee of the New York Assembly and graduated from Iona College with a degree in communications and Gaudet University with a master's degree in the education of the deaf. She's established a disability civil rights firm in New York City based upon those experiences and expertise, and is nationally recognized as an expert in her field by both New York and the national law journals. So Assemblywoman Simon, we welcome you here tonight and are pleased to hear your presentation.
Thank you again. Thank you, Jack. Thank you. I appreciated hearing from Representative from New Mexico as well. Very different dynamic, but also very important, and we are connected, right? And I think one of the things that's so important about this effort is that really the National Infrastructure Bank is something that we all need for slightly different reasons, but we all need it because we all have these same public infrastructure issues, and they play out a little differently from one place or the other. I'm just getting too many text messages here. So one of the things I wanted to share with people is that I have filed a resolution. I think we have 16 or 17 bipartisan co-sponsors in the National Conference of State Legislators. That meeting will be starting July 27th. So it's a week from Monday. And we are hoping to get that resolution passed by the National Conference of State Legislators. A couple of comments were made by one of the committees. We're going to be addressing those, trying to resolve some views, but it's really important because it's comes out of the Transportation Committee. And as I said, we have co-chairs of the Transportation Committee is a sponsor of this resolution. And it's a resolution about the establishment of a national infrastructure bank and how important it is. And I'm very pleased that we have so many bipartisan folks on that resolution. These are all state legislators, so it's not the federal legislators who are going to be signing on to the bill, but we're also focusing on this and the need for a national infrastructure bank and not on the bill, right? Because we don't want to, have anybody go look at the bill and then say, well, it's only Democrats on the bill or what have you, right? We want to make sure that people understand that this really is bipartisan. The state people are working in a bipartisan way on this, and it's so important. So I think that an effort like this, there are always going to be people that are going to have challenges for it. But the reality is, every time I talk to people about this, they all say, whoa, what a great idea. Why aren't we doing that? And if you listen to the messaging around the country about affordability, what are we going to do to make things affordable? We have to do infrastructure, and we don't have the funding for the infrastructure. And infrastructure will make people's lives much better. We'll be able to provide affordable housing. We'll be able to provide roads and bridges and fix the water and sewer and the other infrastructure, provide broadband to people throughout the country. So it's critically important that we are able to invest in infrastructure, public infrastructure. And it's also critically important that localities are the people who are able to direct those funds, because they know what their needs are better than their congresspeople. No matter how connected you are in Congress, you cannot take care of every municipality or every small town, every county. You really need people on the ground who know their communities best and know what their public infrastructure needs are better than people who are at 20,000 feet. So I think that's another really important part about this. I know that you've been talking about this for a while, and so you all kind of know more about it than anybody else. I want to thank you all, and I want to thank also, my friends who are, in the coalition for all of their help. I'm not a banking person, so I rely on Alphecca and other people who know a whole lot more than me. And it's been really a great experience to work on this issue, to have the opportunity to make this case broadly, but also to, have been working with such fine people. So I'll stop there, and I'll let Jack, you can go on to the next person.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Simon, for your presentation tonight and your long-term support for the legislation. We greatly appreciate it. Next, we're now moving to Michigan. So we're hopping around all across the nation as far as support for this effort. Representative Julie Brixey represents the 73rd District in the Michigan House of Representatives, and has served and has obtained a master's in crop and soil sciences, and was heavily involved in sustainable development and infrastructure projects based upon that expertise and her personal knowledge and effort, and serves on the Energy and Economic Competitiveness Committees, and is a co-sponsor of our National Infrastructure Bank resolution in the Michigan House. Welcome, Representative Brixey, to our call and Zoom tonight, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me, and so much for this really important work. So I'm a representative from Michigan, and in the Great Lakes state, we often do this, and I'm from right here in Michigan. We are the Great Lakes state because we're literally surrounded by Great Lakes. And all that lakeshore makes us really great at growing specialty fruit and vegetable crops. So although most people know Michigan as the car state, agriculture is really important here. And we have the second largest number of specialty crops in the US behind California. But unlike California, we have really reliable water sources. So as everyone knows, manufacturing and agriculture really rely heavily on infrastructure in order to get their products to market and to make or grow or process things. Yet here in Michigan, because of our tax structure and combination of our tax structure and the fact that we enacted term limits about 30 years ago, we have some of the worst roads in the country. State representatives were only serving a maximum of 6 years until 2 years ago. And they would just kick the can down the road, and nobody wanted to do anything. Before term limits, we would just raise our gas tax periodically every couple of years, and our roads kept up with inflation. I moved to Michigan in the late 80s, and at that time, our roads were in really great shape. Ironically, after I moved here, they really completely disinvested in them from from that point forward. Our current governor, Governor Whitmer, ran her election and won it on her campaign slogan of "Fix the Damn Roads," but it hasn't been easy to do. And I spent almost 20 years in local government before coming to the state legislature. And in Michigan, our locals have to provide the water infrastructure, any kind of drains or sewage and water utilities. They're all coming from local government. And as bad as our roads were, you can see the roads, and our municipalities would make some effort to do something. But all of the things that are underground that you can't see, like our water infrastructure, has aged so much worse than the roads have. And, you know, as a result of that, I think we became known as the state that poisoned a city, the city of Flint, through pinching pennies during the Great Recession and switching water sources to river water, resulting in lead poisoning of an entire city. Now, while we have addressed what's happened in Flint, there are lots of other cities in Michigan that have aging water infrastructure. Any kind of a city that has a declining population is going to have big problems with their water infrastructure. And then we have the drain infrastructure. With more frequent storms and more violent weather patterns, Michigan is swampy. We've got all sorts of flooding and drainage issues and aging drains. So the idea that our local governments that are so strapped for cash can be able to come up with the money needed for these investments, it's not going to happen. And yet, if they're given the opportunity for low-cost loans, there are a lot of communities that would be able to begin to address these very serious infrastructure problems. So I welcome your work in this area. I very much look forward to having some real progress made in this, because we definitely need something like this in order to help all of our communities and put all these people to work that are looking for jobs. Our government should exist to provide services and essential needs to its people, and water infrastructure and road infrastructure, bridges. These are all things that are pretty essential to the functioning of our society. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Brixey. And just want to comment that your two of the points that you made involving what exists underground that we don't know about is a serious problem that many other supporters of the banks throughout the country also express concerns about. And then also the consequences of not having up-to-date infrastructure with regard to water. And the Flint fiasco is an example of the adverse consequences and health consequences that arise without us paying attention to this critical issue. Thank you so much. Our next guest, now we move to North Carolina, and pleased to introduce Representative Renee Price, who serves in the House of Representatives of the 50th District. And she previously served in the Orange County Board of Commissioners from 2012 until 2023, when she was elected to the 50th District for the House of Representatives in North Carolina. And she serves on the board as well. So Representative Price, thank you for joining us tonight. We welcome you, and we're anxious to hear your presentation.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I'm actually sitting here trying to figure out what not to repeat, because the previous speakers have said so much, and so much is the same no matter where you are in in this nation. But again, thank you for inviting me to speak. And I'm pleased to at least report that 3 out of our 14 Congress members have signed on to the bill, HR 5356. And so we keep moving forward, I hope. But I'll just, my presentation is just a little bit of a history, and then I'll mention something about North Carolina. In 2021, Congress passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which was an historic down payment in addressing the infrastructure crisis in this nation. It appropriated $1.2 trillion for surface transportation and new programs such as universal broadband, the power grid, water and sewer projects, schools, and much more. But that bill expires in September. Now, Congress has drafted a new bill, the Build America Act of 2025, and it is now going through its committees. This bill, however, cuts the bipartisan infrastructure law by 50%, or $580 billion, and all the guaranteed funding is probably, it looks like right now it's going to surface transportation reauthorization. While that is important, that means that, on the other hand, that it leaves out passenger and high-speed rail, water, broadband, electric vehicle charging stations, and schools. They're all left to fend for themselves. And yes, this is being considered, and you may want to think that, well, something is better than nothing. Situations now demand the adoption of a national infrastructure bank, which is an innovation that takes its beginnings actually from history. The $5 trillion National Infrastructure Bank has enough financing to meet all the shortfalls in all categories of hard infrastructure identified by the American Society of Civil Engineers in their 2025 report card. According to the Corps, we need at least $4 trillion just to repair and maintain what we have. The new National Infrastructure Bank adds new projects such as the passenger and high-speed rail and millions of units of truly affordable housing and water projects so that we can continue moving forward. And as a speaker, I think every speaker before me said, we need water and we need housing, and particularly affordable housing. Now, North Carolina itself faces a massive infrastructure funding gap of over $136 billion to about $200 billion for transportation and water. Now, I have to report that finally, as of 2 weeks ago, we passed our budget, a state budget. We had gone over 1,000 days without a state budget, which we should have done last year. And so we are no longer embarrassed to have to say that that we're the only state without a budget. We actually have one now. Now getting back to some of our projects, the American Society of Civil Engineers in their 2026 report card gave North Carolina a C- grade. And that just underscores the severe deferred maintenance and capacity issues for our state. The Department of Transportation is facing a funding shortfall of approximately $144 billion in requested projects from local leaders. And one thing about North Carolina, unlike, there are a few states like us, but cities build roads, but counties do not. The state takes care of anything outside of a municipal jurisdiction. And we've got bridges that need repair. So we've got like $353 million in funding requests to replace and maintain some of our bridges. Water systems, we've got water systems that were built in my district that were built in the 1940s, and they're struggling. Now, I was able to get some money just in this past bill from one of my towns, but the other one is so small, and they're really struggling to figure out where to get the funds, because it's even hard to get a loan in order to provide the matches for some of the grants. People in the western part of our state, you may recall, we had to deal with Tropical Storm Helene, and we're still rebuilding the western part of the state. It's estimated that we need $3.69 billion. That's the damage. I'm sorry. It was estimated $3.69 billion in damage and 163 water and wastewater systems back in 2024. I'm going to skip over some of my notes here. Now, in terms of affordable housing, we've got one of the worst wealth gaps in the nation. Part of my district, I have a little bit of Chapel Hill, but nonetheless, now it's really all spreading now. Where the gap is, I think it may be the worst in the country in terms of those with and the haves and the have-nots. I'll put it that way. But our affordable housing is really in dire shape. We are projected, as of May 2026, it's projected that we have an inventory shortage of more than 764,000 units by 2029, and that's only 3 years from now. And that includes rental properties and for purchase. And we have a very high rental rate here, and it's very difficult to even for first-time home owners, or would be, to even find units to live. And exacerbating that is that we have nearly 30% of older adults in North Carolina spend more than 1/3 of their income on housing, and approximately 76% of extremely low renter households are really cost burdened, having to pay more than half of their income just on housing. So all that to say that, well, first of all, we know that the federal government is falling short on its obligations to state and local governments. In some ways, you could say it's failing. And the National Infrastructure Bank has the potential to drive a massive and permanent recovery effort, whilst also providing jobs, many jobs with all this building, and all of that without having to deal with governmental bureaucracy and political stalemates, such as we had here in North Carolina for over 1,000 days. So again, I believe the time has come for us to build and support this very crucial effort. And that's why, since I was brought into the loop on this National Infrastructure Bank, I've been behind it 101%. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Price. And being from Pennsylvania, where we last year went 5 months over our budget, is an example of how states are struggling to confront balancing their budgets with the infrastructure needs that are required. And your expertise and description and analysis of the bipartisan infrastructure bill and our current proposed legislation and what's going on in North Carolina was very accurate, and thank you for making that presentation. Next, we're moving on to Texas, and a presenter that is involved with the Democratic Party, someone that I can identify with very well given my past experience, Karen Wilkerson, who serves as a member of the State Democratic Executive Committee in Texas. She's the past chair of the Smith County Democratic Party, and she currently is serving as the chair of the Rural Caucus of the Texas Democratic Party. Welcome, Karen, and we're anxious to hear your presentation.
Well, thank you, Jack. I'm happy to be the new kid on the block. I learned about the National Infrastructure Bank Act just a little over a month ago when I heard Dr. Matardi and Stu Rosenblatt after their discussion on the Rural Urban Bridge Coalition. And it's an institute, but I was fascinated. My parents grew up during the Depression, so anything that sounds like an FDR type program always makes my ears perk up. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is better than sliced bread. I don't know why everybody in the country isn't clamoring, as our friend Molly Ivins from Texas would say, banging the pots and pans in the streets, asking for this kind of a win-win proposition that helps the taxpayers and is budget neutral. It makes perfect economic sense to me, and I cannot imagine any state not being 100% behind this bill. 1 in 6 Texans lives in a rural area. Now, there's about 32 million Texans right now, and we continue to grow at a rapid rate. We're one of the fastest growing states in the country. And the problem is that Texas has always been thought of as having a lot of money. And like North Carolina, we have the haves and the have-nots. 13% of our people are living below the poverty line, but Elon Musk also lives here. So we have the situation where our health care in the rural areas is vanishing. Hospitals are closing. People have to drive many miles to get to a hospital or clinic facility for urgent health care needs. And we could see the benefit of joint partnerships with infrastructure type funds making a huge difference about healthcare in rural Texas. Speaking of the roads, there's over 322,000 miles of roads in the state of Texas, and the American Society of Civil Engineers says that 38% of them are in poor shape. So we've got real problems. You know, you may not be able to get someplace, and they continue to degrade. Our utility structure, I mean, Texas has always been an energy giant in the country, but our legendary failures of the grid system during heavy winter weather is legendary. We had people dying in their homes in Texas for lack of gas heat. And I'm third generation oil and gas royalty owner, and so that just really bends my head to find out that people are dying in Texas because they don't have any gas coming in to run their heaters, or their electricity grid has gone down. And even here in Tyler, I live in a small town. Well, it's not too small. It's almost 250,000 population now, so I'm no longer really rural. But we had our water supply endangered because the pumps went down on the system that fueled our municipal water supply. I mean, we've got a lot of water, but we've got a lot of water issues too. Everybody has heard about the flooding that we're having in Texas, and not all of that happens in that hill country area and the rivers. We also have sewage and runoff problems in our cities during rains. San Antonio and Houston both have had major flooding problems and loss of life. I mean, it's dangerous, even when we don't have tornado activity or hurricanes on the Gulf. Just ordinary rainstorms down here. We had one area in San Antonio just this past week that had 20 inches of rain dumped on it in less than 24 hours. Now, I can tell you that will create some flooding situations. We have areas that don't have broadband or cellular service. I laugh sometimes when I talk to the folks at the Democratic Party meetings about they need to get the news out sooner and broader for us, because we're still operating with a Dixie cup and a string sometimes. But, it's the nature of the beast, because it's a big place and it's not all flat. And some of those signals have to go over some pretty good sized mountains and down in a few valleys too. So I think this bill is something that we can all get behind. I know y'all were able to get some literature to us that we passed out at the convention last month here in Texas. Thousands of delegates dropped by our table at the Rural Caucus to ask about the rural help that could be afforded by a bill like this, to share $5 trillion and the millions of jobs that would be created is just astounding. And we are eager to get behind this bill and push our representatives to vote for it and vote for its passage in the United States House of Representatives and in the Senate. Hopefully we'll have a Democratic senator to take to Texas again. So I'm delighted to join the group and toot the horn as loud as I can for this bill. I love it.
Thank you, Karen Wilkerson, and your advocacy is very conspicuous and obvious with that presentation. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and supporting the National Infrastructure Bill legislation. Next, we're going to, let me jump around to Oakland, California. Carol Fife is a city councilwoman in Oakland, and prior to joining the council, In 2019, she helped Mums for Housing, a group of Black mothers who occupied a vacant corporate-owned home, advocating for housing as a basic human right, which I think most all of us agree with, and has been fighting for housing and the homelessness in Oakland and California for years. We welcome her here tonight and want to hear her thoughts about housing on a national level. Councilwoman Fife, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for having me today. And thank you for actually opening up about Moms for Housing, because I want to set the record straight and just explain a little bit about why I got involved in that. But first, let me introduce myself. There are a lot of people on here that I know, but so many more that I don't. My name is Carol Fife. I'm originally from Michigan, so I was very happy to hear Julie Brixey speaking about my home state where I was born and raised. But for the last 30 years, I've made my home in California, and I represent District 3 on the Oakland City Council. And I'm joining you as someone who deals with these issues around affordability every single day. California is home to over 50% of the nation's homeless population, and it's a gap between the haves and have-nots that is continuously growing in our state. And when I was a part of this Moms for Housing action, I was a director of a nonprofit. And so 4 of my staff each came to me at different times during the year, completely separate, not knowing about each other, in distress about losing their access to housing. All of the women were mothers. All of them were working full-time jobs, college educated, and they all asked me for references on affordable places to live. And being their boss, I knew the salaries that they were making. And I knew that there was no place in our city where working a full-time job, making the wages they were making, they could afford a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment for them and their children. And as the director of this nonprofit, I was also the person that would receive people that were walking by my office who would come in and just rest or use my microwave or sit on my couch. And there was this one elder who was a senior citizen in her 70s who had been on the streets for years. And one day I came into work and my communications director asked me if I knew what happened, if I had heard what happened to Miss Gwen. And I heard that she was in the hospital because she tried to take her life, because she needed a place to either stay for the night or a place to rest forever. And for me, because one of the mothers also expressed potentially taking her own life, I said that there was something that we had to do immediately. And my heart couldn't take another person that I knew, to not having access to affordable housing. And that's a crisis that we're not just experiencing in California, it's happening all over the nation. And in the wealthiest nation in the world, I don't think that that is something that American citizens should have to deal with, particularly in California, which is the 5th largest economy. Some people say the 4th largest economy in the entire world. So what this growing gap of haves and have-nots looks like in California, on the ground in my city, is roads crumbling faster than we can repave them. It's a sewer system under a consent decree. It's a transit system that is on life support, a transit system that connects working people to jobs, to housing that's almost impossible to afford for working families, seniors, for people with disabilities. It's a power grid that is consistently having to deal with what my fire team says is a year-long fire season. It used to be in certain parts of the year, but now every single day, 365 days a year, California is dealing with the potential of a wildfire and a power grid that is not adequately serving it. California faces challenges like this, and like every city in America, we're consistently told that we don't have money to address these issues, but yet we have money for ongoing wars all over the world. I think it's time to stop that. And that's why I'm here today, because the infrastructure funding gap in this country continues to grow. And a national infrastructure bank financed without new taxes and without piling on to the federal deficit is the kind of tool that could finally match the scale of the problem to the scale of the solution and get it to every state, every county, and every city, and not just the ones like California that have deep pockets, but still don't have the funds to address the needs of everyday working people, retired people, people currently living on the streets. It should not look like a third world country in any of our cities. And through the National Organization of Mayors, I've traveled all over the country, gone to different states, and heard from legislators everywhere who are dealing with the same issues, not necessarily the scale, but the same exact issues. And I'm over it. I don't know about anybody else. I know a lot of people on this call are, but I want to do something about it. And we don't get to have our voices heard collectively enough on these issues. It doesn't feel like at the federal level, the people who have built this country and have served this country, who have paid into Social Security, who are struggling in my district, and I'm talking about our seniors, are being served with the number of units that are necessary for senior housing. And the same thing for our veterans who have served in the military, who are now facing impossible obstacles when it comes to health care and housing. It's just, I don't believe in 2026 these issues should continue to exist. That's why on a local level, I've advocated for a public bank. I'm actually on the board for the Public Bank of the East Bay, and have brought legislation locally to address this problem on a smaller scale. But what we're doing here, why we're all here today, really, really fills my heart, because I believe it can address the issue in the place where I was raised in West Michigan, from places where my brother and my sister serve the federal government in Washington, D.C., to places where my aunts and uncles have retired in Florida, and places all across the country where all of our loved ones live. And so we can't wait. We really just cannot wait. And I'm excited to organize from the grassroots to the grass tops for solutions to the issues that we all care about. Oakland is ready to be a part of that model. So I'm taking my directions and my marching orders from the people who know this work better than I do. So Jack, thank you. I want to thank you all for the link that I just got today, because my staff is sick. So I had to hurry up and try to get on this call. But whatever I need to do, I'm a foot soldier for what our country needs and for what the most vulnerable people need. And that is public infrastructure and financing that does not cut into the pocketbooks of working class people or people that are striving to exist. So thank you for the ability to speak to you all today, and give me my marching orders.
Thank you, Councilman Fife. And I want to say that Oakland is very fortunate to have an advocate like you serve in a public role. It's a challenge that the city faces, and I can tell by your expression and comments that you have a very clear grasp of what to do. So best of luck to you going forward. Our last speaker tonight, we're going back to New York City. And I'm pleased and happy to introduce to you Ramona Ferreira of the South Bronx, who's a social entrepreneur and a leading public housing advocate. That housing issue just keeps coming up all over the country, who founded the Save Section 9 Coalition. She advocates for traditional public housing and against privatization, and has experience serving on the National Public Housing Museum, and holds 3 master's degrees, including credentials from Harvard's Kennedy School, and previously worked for the FBI and the Department of Defense. Ramona, welcome tonight, and you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jack. So I think the best way to kind of share our work and why we are supporting this effort is my own personal story. I have had a relationship with public housing for 35 years. My grandmother lived in this apartment before I did. And through education, opportunities, and public service, I was able to reach the level of being a six-figure earner, living in Hawaii and thinking that my life was going to be in public service. I eventually got sick, became disabled, and unable to hold a traditional job, and came back to New York City and found that the only place that I could afford to live on public assistance, as I waited for Social Security, was public housing. So I founded Safe Section 9 about 7 years ago. And what we've seen throughout the country is that the response to the conditions in public housing has been to actually privatize and demolish it. Demolitions are currently on the table in New York City, Minneapolis, San Antonio, and Los Angeles right now in 2026. And the privatization program has really depleted our public housing stock. So when folks talk about the challenges for affordable housing, we know that the real need is concentrated amongst the seniors and the disabled, and that these are people that are earning $45,000 or less. So public housing is the only program in the United States that actually locks your rent to your income. That means that you pay 30% of your income, and you are allowed to reach economic mobility, and you're empowered to do so through resident engagement and resident empowerment, funding and resources that are allocated by Congress. Right now, you have a huge push in public housing to actually connect folks with green technology jobs and to prepare them to hold the jobs of the future. These are services that my neighbors take advantage of, mostly end up with union employment and higher education through this, right? So it is a program that really stabilizes households and provides the social infrastructure also by supporting aging in place. We have community senior centers and children and youth centers that provide programming, enrichment, entertainment, and education. I actually got to spend today on a field trip to Sesame Street with all of the developments from the South Bronx in New York City and the children with autism. And it was a special day that Sesame Street put together for us so that the kids could have an opportunity to have a sensory adequate experience at Sesame Place. And that's just one of the examples of what our community has access to, and just how beautiful it is to live in a place where you are not determined, your worth is not determined by how much you earn, but by how much you contribute to your family and to your community. Public housing also provides longevity and stability. Most tenants live in public housing for an average of 25 years. There is also succession rights, which means that when my grandmother passed away, I was on the lease and I was able to then take on this apartment, this beautiful home that I now have. And like I said, it's the only reason why I'm not in a shelter. I think across the country, all of you have mentioned that housing is a real challenge, right? And affordable housing keeps getting developed in a way where it is linked to your area median income. And that is excluding the most vulnerable, right? Like Councilmember Fife spoke about the mothers, right? And the challenges, right, with income. For us, we see this bank as an opportunity for the housing authorities to actually get the resources and the funding that they need to address the backlog. And the backlog is big. We have been starving public housing since Reagan. So it's been since my birth year, 1980. And it's showing, right? We have massive capital repair needs. And the estimate for the country right now is about 80 billion. That is a huge number, but it is a feasible number. And then when you think about the longevity and the physical capacity that our buildings have, it's a worthwhile investment. Public housing is well built. It is union developed. One of my favorite things in our apartment is that when it was built, they actually layered on cement. There is no sheetrock, right? When our tiles were put in place, they were cut by hand by these skilled American employees and union members that build something that provides longevity. And when we've had earthquakes in New York City and across the country, the public housing is usually the one that doesn't have any defects because it is so well built, right? So I hope everyone joins me and our organization and my neighbors. There's 1 million households across the country. Every single city currently has a Faircloth allowance that you are able to look up and see how many units you could build to take you to your maximum under Faircloth. In New York, it's 24,000 units. So many of you could be building public housing Section 9 units tomorrow and ensuring true affordability, economic resources and empowerment, and you would be building at a lower cost rate than the private market. In New York City, what the unions can do for about $52,000, which is actually turn over an entire apartment, addressing mold, asbestos, lead, new cabinetry, and bathrooms, is around $52,000. It is 3 times as much when we privatize public housing and we hand it over to a corporate real estate firm. So from a taxpayer perspective, it is not a good investment to privatize. And the demolitions are mostly cases of economic apartheid, where we are seeing developments being proposed that are mixed income and tend to cluster the former public housing tenants into lower quality spaces, remove many of the economic and social resources that are available to us as public housing tenants, and encourage gentrification and displacement of primarily Black and Brown senior and disabled communities. So again, we see the bank as a path to reverse this trend. And we're working, with this coalition to make this a reality, pushing our members in the New York delegation, and then also identifying revenue streams so that we can make sure that we can keep public housing with that rent lock at 30% of someone's income. I'll drop our link in the chat, and then I'll also drop the link for the RAD allowance in case folks want to see what their allowance is in their district, city, or state.
Great. Thank you, Ramona. What an expertise you've developed in the area of public housing, which is a critical need throughout the entire country. So thank you for joining us tonight and the work that you do. We're now going to open up the floor to questions, and I encourage all of you to please identify yourself, and we'll have your question considered by our guests. So, and please forgive me if I don't see someone raising their Kimberly, I saw that you had your hand up earlier and wanted to comment about not being able to get to you at that point in time. So now we are able to, and thank you for your patience.
Oh,
Kimberly.
no, thank you. Thank you. This is an amazing and stellar panel of people. And you've hit all of most of the really vital issues having to do with infrastructure and housing. I did want to ask a quick question of Representative Kathleen Cates of New Mexico, since her state has several tribal nations. How does she think that this might work for tribal nations?
I absolutely think it'll work for tribal nations, for all infrastructure, but especially for water. You know how most of we have an enormous amount of tribal presentation in New Mexico. And in fact, the county I live in has the second largest amount of tribes in any county in the country. But many of them do not have, they use what we call hauled water. They don't have the infrastructure. And when the NIB was flourishing, not the NIB, I'm so sorry, when the Infrastructure Act was flourishing, there were many projects that started, and I think that, they're trying to finish off now. that would bring hauled water or bring water through pipelines into those areas. And I think that it would very much. Obviously, we still deal with trains and roads and all kinds of infrastructure. And a lot of the tribal territories are looking into alternative energy too, and how can they be able to deliver that and sell it to other states that will help the economy in their tribes.
And I agree with you. And as a person who has lived on the Umatilla Nation here in Oregon, we have those same challenges. You know, my parents lived on their property for 20 years, have always had a 5-mile dirt road to get to home. And that's with all of the amazing things that the Umatilla Nation has already done. So to me, this lifts many people up in many different ways.
Thank you, Kimberly. And let me just add that the bill's language contains provisions that targets economically distressed areas throughout the entire country as priority recipients with regard to funding for their infrastructure development. Next, we're going to go to Scott Burns, who has a question. And Scott, if you would unmute, we'd be very happy to hear your question and have our participants respond.
Great, thanks, Jack. And thanks to all the speakers. My question is really for anybody, but there's been so much discussion lately about these AI data centers being cited in many, many places and a lot of public pushback. Has the coalition been able to look at that or address that in any way?
I'm going to take a stab at this, but someone else that wants to add on to it, please do. We think the AI effort, or I think, let me put it that way, the AI effort is a Wall Street funded by billionaire interests that is sucking investment resources into a very narrow focus that will not benefit the public good and public will. And that's another reason why we need to have an infrastructure bank, because Wall Street is not going to fund this. The federal government isn't going to fund it because they're tapped out with the taxes and debt that they have. Same thing with states. So I'll let someone else respond if they have any comment, but we're focusing on the broader interest of the country for the infrastructure that it needs. It's so narrow, and the significant amount of money that's being dumped into this, it's a bubble, in my opinion. And I think we're going down a very dangerous path that we're going to pay the price for. Others. Joanne?
Oh,
go ahead. Someone else was going to speak.
I'll add on to that. One of the sectors that the National Infrastructure Bank will help with explicitly is the electricity sector. We recognize that for a long time, demand for electricity was not growing. There was not much investment going on. But lately, within the last 10 years or so, we've had this explosion of new demand. People are moving around the country. And now we've had the AI effect of sucking up a lot of the electric power to build AI data centers. It couldn't be worse any place than it is here where we live in Northern Virginia. It's just amazing. And so one of the things that the NIB will work on is expanding the transmission lines to move renewable power. We follow the electricity sector very carefully. There's 6,400 gigawatts of renewable energy that has no place to plug in. And the private equity companies that own a lot of the utilities are not making the investments. So we need to prod them forward to increase transmission capacity on the grid.
Next, we're going to have Assemblywoman Simon respond to that question, and then Nina, you will be up next. Assemblywoman Simon.
Yeah, thank you. Alfeka sort of answered part of it for me, but clearly, public infrastructure can be energy, right? There are various aspects of energy that that governments do. Our governor just did an executive order with a moratorium on large data centers. We have a moratorium bill that we passed almost unanimously in one house, because really this issue affects everybody. And a lot of renewable energy is cheaper, like solar in particular, and Texas is doing a lot of this. It is cheaper to bring online, and it's very stable, and it's very good. Wind can do a lot too, but it takes longer to build it, that sort of thing. But if in fact you wanted to have offshore wind, this could help fund the capital investments for offshore wind. So I think it's very important. And also, we're finding, and we've done this in some public housing developments in New York, and put in heat pumps, right? The heat pumps are actually providing people with stable heat, but also air conditioning. And they're loving it. And in certain climates, of course, if it's a window-based heat pump, it's not going to be as sufficient as something that is thermal and in the ground. But in New York City, this has been working fine. And so we're really looking at balcony solar and other aspects and distributed solar that people can do on a more localized level. And in one of our communities, we just set up a community solar, and the community is owning the solar. And the money is going to continue to invest in it and expand it and provide, more renewable, but also cheaper electricity for community members. And so that's a little different, and it took a while to get going, but it's working beautifully. And once we've done it, then we can do it again. It's much easier to do it the second time. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and this could absolutely help fund the infrastructure that's needed to bring more energy online.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Simon. Nina, your question. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you could unmute, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I am Nina Jalil, and I am a proud resident here in Chicago. I am here with the congressman who initiated this particular bill, so I am honored to be here. But there is a lot of work for us to do. I just recently was at PUSH, volunteering my time at PUSH and trying to connect the NIB with them. And now I understand that we're about to have a convention at NAACP right here in Chicago. Again, another way to connect. But I was really interested. I'm glad about this because I'm able to hear what's going on in other parts of this country. Of course, I know about what's going on here because I too, like some testimony that I've heard, am living in conditions that are trying. I'm a part of the have-nots, at least that's the way I feel, because I'm struggling in certain areas, dealing with housing. But I am familiar with Mercy Housing here in Chicago that has several buildings. Some buildings are meeting the infrastructure bill right now. The roads, everything that I've heard discussed. So we're working on multiple levels here in Chicago to make things happen. My question though is designed for, I think her name, she's a councilwoman, Carol Fife. She talked about the Moms for Housing. I wanted to know how she got that organized and how she was inspired to do so.
Thank you, Nina.
My pleasure.
Thank you also, Nina. This is Councilmember Fife. My mom is from the south side of Chicago, and I visit every year. I try to. But I will say, if you could mute yourself, then I could.
I'm trying to. Let's see. I can't find. Okay.
Maybe. Thank you, Nina. And I do appreciate the question. And if you could email me, my email is carol@carolfife.org. I would like to connect you with some of the elected officials that I know in Chicago and some people who do have access to affordable housing. So maybe we could find something or address some of the specific concerns that you have. But I've been a grassroots organizer in Oakland for almost 3 decades. And what I was able to do was pull all of those different individuals and organizations that I've known over the years together around an issue, because it's an issue that so many people are facing in my city, in my region, in my state, right? So we first organized with several labor unions a march. It was teachers, nurses, our city workers, public works, all of these different groups, as well as several different community organizations that deal with tenants' rights. And we did a housing week of action from Northern California to Southern California. So there were marches in cities and geographies all over the state of California. And they asked every city that was involved in this week of action to do something in their city. And because I knew what all of my different staff members were experiencing, I brought everybody together and I said, I don't have resources to get you housed because I'm in a very similar situation to you all, but I know how to organize. So if you trust me, I'm going to make sure you have housing at the end of this effort. And my heart was in it. That's how I made it happen. And I say but it was not just me. It was a host of attorneys. It was a host of legal observers. It was thousands of community members who showed up on a moment's notice when we said an eviction is taking place. And I want everybody to understand what we specifically went through. I had never in my life, outside of going to Caribbean cities in Jamaica and Kingston and places like that, and the Philadelphia convention, we were trying to elect a president in 2020, seen armed men with helmets and full battle armor on, flak jackets, AR-15s, full, like all of the ammunition across their chests. Those were the only two places in my life. And every man in my family has been in the military. And I've never seen the military presence that I saw on that residential streets when sheriffs in battle riot gear came with a battering ram to batter down the door of this residential home where homeless women and their children were. And every Democratic candidate for president talked about it that year in 2020, but it just goes to show you the defense that they will put up to protect property, but not the fact that there are so many women and children living on the streets. So I did it through a network of organizers and people who cared about the housing crisis in California, but it can be duplicated and has been duplicated in London, England, and Los Angeles. And we were invited to the Vatican last October by the Pope and some other organizations to talk about the model that we use to bring attention to the housing crisis. Bringing attention is one thing. Now we have to bring the funding. That's why I'm here today.
Thank you, Councilwoman Fife. We're going to wrap things up tonight, and I'm going to have Angela make a presentation to conclude our presentation tonight. I just want to say that, as you can see from the guests that we had, this is a national effort that we're promoting and that we have support from. And our goal is to get the legislation passed, and that means getting to our congressional members all over the country. And that's what we're hoping and wishing and asking you to do. And Angela's going to go into more details as to how to actually accomplish that. Angela, take it away.
March. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we are on a forced march now to get co-sponsors on HR 5356. And you heard from many speakers on all the reasons why. We will be attending, well, first I want to go through some of the support that we have. Anybody that wants to reach out to their member of Congress, we have 64 co-sponsors. Obviously, we've got to get a lot more. You can email me at the email below or call me. The support that we have nationally is quite significant. Over the last year or so, we've gotten the National Association of Counties, the National Federation of Democratic Women. We just got the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the Democratic municipal officials, and the DNC itself. So this is quite significant national support. So we have quite a lot of momentum. Now, some of the recent endorsements have come from the Wyoming Democratic Party, Save Section 9 that you heard about from Ramona, and the California Association of Professional Employees, which that means that any of you that want to reach out to organizations and want us to do a formal presentation on the bank to get a resolution passed, we welcome that. Because as many of you know, the way that we've gotten the co-sponsors on the federal level is by going to the grassroots. This is all grassroots driven. And you heard from several of the speakers that we're going to be involved over the next couple weeks attending conferences where we actually have live resolutions. The first one will be in Chicago beginning next week at the NAACP. The following week, we will be going to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Also, we have a resolution that will be debated. And then in August in Austin, we will be attending the DNC summer meeting, where you can imagine that there's the discussion is going to be hot and heavy around a platform going into the midterms. So our presence at all of these places, because we'll be engaging in the debate with people on the ground that are grappling with these ideas, reaching out to the American people, letting people know that there are solutions to the things that nobody else really is talking about in a concrete way. Whether it's how are you going to finance infrastructure, how are you going to make things more affordable. We are the only group that actually has a concrete proposal. So that being said, our fundraising for our attendance on the ground at these conventions is all grassroots. We don't go to the corporations. We're not going to the private sector. We're coming to people like you and, you know, grassroots financing. So we urge anybody that is in a position, I can tell you that we greatly appreciate all of the support that all of the people on this call have given us over the last months, because we wouldn't be doing what we're able to do now without your financial support. But it means that we have to continue, because the responsibilities of the coalition, as you have heard, are really mounting. That as the crisis deepens and the failure of other leaders to come out with a concrete proposal makes our obligation even more dire. So I urge you to make a contribution to help us. And here's all of our information. If any of you know of anybody who would like to help us on social media, we need a few young people that can really help us in posting. Also, what you should know in terms of the contribution, we did add Act Blue up on our website. So if you don't particularly like giving through PayPal, you can now contribute through Act Blue. So that's really what I wanted to say. Anybody that wants to get really involved in this, please email me at avullo, V like Victor, ULLO, at nibcoalition.com, avullo@nibcoalition.com. This is only going to be done with your help, with us sort of shaping the policy fight, but people should be really excited and happy about what we're accomplishing, because the country right now, as you know, is in complete disarray. People are wanting change, but that change really has to be defined. And as you heard on this call, it's being defined by us and people that we're working with on the state and local level. So I'll just stop there and turn it back to Jack.
Unmute.
Jack, unmute.
So sorry. Thank you, Angela, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We're going to wrap it up. As has been mentioned, we now are up to 64 sponsors and co-sponsors. And as you review the situation in Congress and in Washington, D.C., there are no alternatives that are being put forth with regard to our infrastructure, but for a national infrastructure bank. We are on the right path. We need to successfully accomplish this, and your efforts are instrumental and necessary for us to do so. So thanks again for joining us. We'll be back in contact, and we greatly appreciate your support. Have a great evening.